I'm Dr. Lisa Pallett. I am the advisor for the PhD program. We also have Dr. Snyder and Dr. Doherty with us. Would the two of you like to say hi?
Go ahead, Dr. Doherty.
Hi, I'm Kathy Doherty. I'm Dean here at School of Education. So welcome to everyone.
And I'm Dr. Adele Snyder, and I work primarily with the doctoral students, and I'm an associate professor in the School of Ed.
All right. And I see Joe here, Dr. W, we call him because nobody can say his last name.
That's a good. Hi, everybody. Hi, Adele. Welcome.
Hi.
Stephanie, how
Hello,
are you?
everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Bala. Thank you, Dr. Doherty. Hey, Dr.
Hi.
Stephanie.
And I'm
right.
Adele Merlino, and my two kids, Amanda and David, are on because they have to torment me while I'm doing this.
Well, at least I have their cameras off so you can't see their faces if they're making
Yes.
any.
We'll keep them muted because they may have kazoos or something.
They can save those for the end, the celebration.
Yeah.
Great.
So should I share my screen?
Yeah, you can go ahead and get started unless your chair has anything else to say about you. I think we're ready to go.
Okay, so this is intercultural knowledge competence assessing undergrads in COIL virtual exchange. So the acronym is Collaborative Online International Learning. The way I became interested in COIL was after my provost suggested I go to a SUNY COIL conference in New York City. After that, I started incorporating it in my courses and became the campus coordinator. This research aimed to explore the impact of collaborative online international learning on American undergrads and the development of intercultural knowledge and competence, which is a model used in the United States and abroad that falls under the umbrella term virtual exchange. In terms of intercultural knowledge and competence, that's defined as a set of cognitive, affective, and behavioral skills and characteristics that support effective and appropriate interaction in a variety of cultural contexts. It's the ability to effectively communicate and engage with those of diverse national, linguistic, and ethnic backgrounds, and are necessary skills in many careers and work environments. So the model starts with two professors from different countries and linguistic backgrounds and cultures, and they work together to create a module of shared interdisciplinary or disciplinary content that students do a project. In the end, they do icebreakers, discussions, and then in the end, they work together to create a team-based project. So the rationale for studying the assessment of COIL was to determine the extent to which it is a viable non-mobile form of global education that supports the acquisition of intercultural knowledge and competence for all students of every socioeconomic, linguistic, and cultural background. The primary question concerning this study is whether COIL experiences lead to positive outcomes in intercultural knowledge, competence development. The gap in the literature. Although several studies have attempted to assess the elusive nuances of intercultural competence, there remains a gap in the literature as to if participation in COIL relates to the knowledge, skills, and attitudes of intercultural knowledge and competence, or how COIL impacts students and how they should be assessed. Further, no research specifically addresses the assessment of intercultural knowledge and competence as indicated by the 6 dimensions of the AAC&U intercultural knowledge and competence value rubric in the early or retrospect COIL and post after the experience COIL in the Purdue Asks To survey. Theoretical framework. Due to the socialization aspect of COIL, Bandura's social learning theory is an appropriate educational philosophy in which to conduct this research. Bandura believed that humans are active information processors who can think about the relationship between their behaviors and consequences. A distinguishing claim of social learning theory is that self-regulatory functions are created and occasionally supported by external influences, and that human behavior can be fashioned by direct and vicarious experiences. In COIL, student interactions via web conferencing and online collaborative tools foster that knowledge construction in a social setting. So even the collaboration between the two professors can model the behavior expected of COIL students. Research questions. These were quantitatively collected and analyzed statistically using a Likert scale survey from the Purdue University Attitude Skills Knowledge Short Scale 2 survey, which is based on the AAC&U Intercultural Knowledge Competence Value Rubric. The first three questions asks, to what extent does participation in COIL course component relate to the changes in students' 1, perceived knowledge, 2, perceived skills, 3, perceived attitude outcomes of the AAC&U Intercultural Knowledge and Competence Value Rubric. The fourth question is, do the 6 knowledge, skills, and attitude dimensions represent one or more latent constructs? And that is done through an exploratory factor analysis. The final question is qualitatively collected through semi-structured and structured interview data. How do varying instructor supports and interventions relate to the student COIL VE learning experience? And the study design is convergent, exploratory, multi-phase, mixed method, simultaneously collected in 2 phases, and then a sampling design. Participant recruitment started with a public call on SUNY COIL administrators meetings, emailing coordinators and instructors continuously, and then social media outreach through LinkedIn, and instructors either 5 signed consent forms to be interviewed, and 9 instructors, including myself, administered the surveys to their students. And then moving on to research findings. Students in 5 courses taught by the 5 instructors were interviewed. As I said before, 64 fully took the in retrospect, 50 fully completed the after experience. The total sample was 161 students in the 9 courses, 92 fully completed the in retrospect, 70 fully completed the after experience. Combach's alpha results showed reliability of the KSA scales, both in retro and after. The only one that was a slightly lower, above 0.700, was in retrospect attitudes, which was a 0.688, which was reasonable. So we can assume the scales were reliable. The paired samples t-test showed that the null hypothesis was not rejected for knowledge, skills, and attitudes. So in conclusion, there were no changes in students' perceived knowledge, skills, and attitudes as per the S2 surveys. And my favorite part of this whole research is the latent constructs that came out. It fell into 3 components. And this suggests that COIL is associated with different competencies than the knowledge, skills, and attitude in the S2 survey. And I wholeheartedly believe that it's more closely aligned to cultural sensitivity, cultural awareness, and communication. And cultural sensitivity, it reflects the behaviors and demonstrates the sensitivity one has towards others, welcoming, questioning, seeking answers, being supportive, having empathy, all display sensitivity towards others in a cultural context. Cultural awareness encompasses an awareness of one's own culture and biases, and demonstrates one culture, a knowledge of cultural differences, and an awareness of various aspects of culture. The interesting part is knowledge, worldview fell into both component 1 and 2. What fell into component 3, communication, was nonverbal and verbal communication skills, which was spot on, amazing. Moving on to the qualitative aspect of this survey. The themes that came out of it were emergent themes were intervening, the approaches instructors took to intervene when various teamwork issues arose among students, preparing students to facilitate introductions and collaboration with their peers. 3, facilitating intercultural knowledge and competence learning. Implementing the COIL model in a purposeful way and an intentional way to facilitate IKC learning. Promoting cultural awareness, what they did to develop students' cultural awareness in COIL by providing a lesson or activity discussion in a cultural context. And then engaging and motivating aspects is really what, in the instructor's views, created student engagement and motivation. And in conclusions and discussions, the S2 survey instrument, in my opinion, is not indicative of learning taking place in COIL. There is a possibility that the survey is not sensitive to changes in students' experience as a result of COIL, and I don't think it's a valid measure of COIL specific learning outcomes. What I love, and I'm saying it again, is the 3 components that came out of it. It's COIL-centric. A COIL-centric survey instrument could be developed with these 3 new constructs. And what I think is key from everything is that it's important in professional development of these instructors to incorporate modeling behavior. The instructors that use Zoom this way, spot on, hit the nail over the head. And students meeting peers and conducting working sessions was very important to their learning. Again, preparation pre-COIL with the technology and understanding the culture of their partner institution, and maybe even the history, as one instructor had done, is very important. And recommendations in instructional design and backward design, chunking the content from the icebreaker, which is the first step in COIL, to the final project. It eliminates cognitive overload in the model, and students at the end start to understand how to, where they're going with their project. They're not starting from ground zero. And very important, and I feel like this cannot be stressed enough, the model suggests reflection at the end, and I say, no, reflection at every point of the model, which a minimum of 3 times, if not more, because students need to have context to their learning. And that's very important. And it's only done by having an open and honest discussion in class. Suggestions for the future: replication of the study with a larger, more diverse sample using a new COIL-specific survey. Multiple study institutions using US and international partner institutions in the study. And I would love to hear what students have to say about their perceptions of COIL in terms of intercultural knowledge and competence, what they feel they've gained, if anything. So having a student focus group is important. And, another great way to do this is to observe them maybe on Zoom, follow COIL students and their interactions and collaborations. I know that's a slippery slope with permission and all, but watching them and just listening to them may bring some new knowledge to this table. Developing a new survey with the 3 constructs: cultural sensitivity, awareness, and communication. I can't stress that enough. I would love to work on that. And I would love to work on a control group study where the same course is taught with a COIL and one without a COIL, and administer an assessment and see what happens. And that's it. Any questions? Did I speak fast enough? The Evelyn Wood method of presentation.
You did great. Thank you. All right. Any questions from anyone?
I have one, Adele, for you, just a little bit. So, interesting that you observe now that you'd like to observe the interactions among all the participants in this. So both for verbal and nonverbal. I think it's a great course of study.
Yeah.
Difficult, yes, but I think between what they say, because now you've gathered what they said they learned, and now what you really can see is, sort of how they actually, what did that really mean in terms of linguistics or sociolinguistics in this case, right? So between what they say they learned, what they actually happened, that self-reported data are often incorrect, right? Or at least that adds the bias factor. So I think that would be a great study. And the other thing you really added to this is the time factor. You sort of mentioned that it's going to take an investment of time and energy on the professor's part to even see what's going on. So I think that's great. I mean, I'd like to see the course you're going to develop based on this, because I think it would be a good course. A pre-COIL course would be one that right up your alley. And you've got a lot of things. You're adding a lot of things here to the knowledge base. So I think it's great. You did a great job here. So just
Yeah,
I don't know if there was a question in there. I felt like an attorney now. I don't know if there's a question in that, but it's sort of like I thought about that. Yeah.
Shared with you how, intercultural knowledge and competence is a tough nut to crack in 8 weeks. But I do think that there is learning. I see it in my own courses. Every professor I talked to, interviewed, believed their students were learning. Those that modeled their behavior with their partners on Zoom and conducted working sessions with their students got that insignificant increase in means in retro to the post. And the 2 instructors, B and E, B started out really strong in her means in retrospect, but then kind of tanked. She did no reflection, no modeling. She was not as active. She didn't intervene as much. Even with the technology, she didn't do much in that regard because she felt overwhelmed by all her content that she had to teach. Whereas instructor E went from being low to coming on top because she did this modeling a couple of times, and she did the reflections, and she did some pretty lively reflections. And I feel that students, and she did a cultural aspect. She showed her class. She did a whole lesson on her country's culture, and I think that made a difference with her COIL. I do believe that there's learning. I do think that students start to become more empathetic and sensitive to others. I do feel that this is a perfect thing for DEI. I've used it with my freshman course, but it could be used in any disciplinary content.
that kind of actually leads to where I was going to have a question, which is if you had a lot of diversity in the participants in terms of their content area and you know, in terms of the courses they were teaching.
Mhm.
Do you think that there's any particular course that this would be a great model for? I mean, I'm just kind of curious.
Outside of language learning, outside of that, because that's how it's been used in uni collaboration, which is, you know, the tele collaboration, I'm sorry, which is used in Europe a lot. Or originally that's how it was used. I do believe media courses, sociology, psychology, it's used a lot in engineering, believe it or not, where they're doing some pretty hefty projects together. And it usually goes the whole semester, not, you know, 8 weeks.
Right.
So they do learn to set back and say, you know, what is my partner saying? They communicate differently than I do. They learn, students, I do believe, learn to become more patient with who they're working with and understand if there is that cultural context that they need to, you know, not everybody's like an American, you know, and not everybody acts the same way. Different cultural contexts need to be looked at. And so I think that it's a real learning curve. And another study would be, you know, surveying students that have done this more than once. You know, as COIL grows, I believe that, you know, this could be something that students see a lot of. I see it's growing in my institution, and they were like this with it. And now they're seeing I'm doing it, and I have other instructors doing it. It's kind of growing on my campus. You know, I've pushed it and I believe in it, and everybody thinks it's great and cool now. So I hope that it grows, because I think it's a great way to learn. It's very hands-on. It's awesome. It really is an awesome way for students to go beyond the content and learn how to deal with others more than anything, different than they are.
Right. I know you and I talked about this way back, but I would love to see, you know, it's called a design-based experiment. It's kind of a bump up action research and make it a little bit deeper, but where, you know, kind of like you were talking about with the control group study, I would love to see a deeper dive into, you know, students, faculty, everything. Because I mean, as you pointed out, those that did this process with fidelity, that implemented the things that they were supposed to implement, had greater change, not only for themselves and their own thought about how courses should run, but in their students' learning. And so I would love to see this studied in a deeper way.
And I honestly, Angela, professional development is so big and important. It has to go beyond saying, oh, this is the first phase of the model. And this
Yeah,
is
but it has to be more than go try.
yeah. And those, one instructor had 9 years and she did very well, but she did reflection, but not to the level that one other professor did it. And there are things that we should be doing that I think are key. And I'm going to quote Stephanie in the COIL guide, which just came out. You can't do enough of reflection. And that is something that I really learned in this study. I myself didn't think reflection was that important. It was only through my own experience and time that I took with COIL that I realized these kids need to talk about it. These kids need to come out and say, my team, they're shy, they don't talk, they're snooty, they're this, they're that. No, you know, like my my class last year collaborated with Ukraine. These kids were shell shocked. They were in the middle of a war at that point. One's in Ireland, one's in Germany. They're all moving. And my kids were taking it offensively that they weren't responding. So it was only by saying, okay, so what happened? Did you guys meet? Did you talk? What happened? That's how it came out that, wait, I'm being harsh. I didn't realize that these kids are like moving and they're trying to study. And here I am whining, you know, I'm a freshman, they're a freshman too, and I'm whining about my situation. Meanwhile, they have it harder, you know? So that was eye-opening for them in our reflection and in our discussion. So that alone is a learning outcome. That alone, they learned, they got something out of it. Are they intercultural and they could travel the world and communicate with anybody? You know, intercultural takes a lot. I think you need to be living in a country, you know, 10 years to really be acclimated to the culture and the language. So, you know, let's not take that I see too far with COIL. That's my take on it.
Right. and-
Is it?
Yep.
I'll just say a couple of things if if that's okay. Is that appropriate?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool beans. I just wanted to compliment your institution for supporting this dissertation. It's a new pedagogy. A lot of institutions, a lot of programs aren't necessarily familiar with it. I've seen that there's been pushback around the world when students want to study COIL. So kudos to your institution for supporting Adele. And as a practitioner in the field, I'm so grateful for this dissertation because it provides evidence that validates strongly the work that we do at FIU COIL and other institutions are doing around the world with providing that professional development. I truly hope, Adele, that you are able to shout these results from the rooftop. The monthly COIL meetups that SUNY and FIU are doing together, but IVEC, AIEA,
Yeah.
You definitely want to submit you know, some articles. Doesn't necessarily have to be a journal article. In fact, I would say go for it. Send your stuff to maybe Liberal Education, AAC&U's publication, or IIE Networker. Think about University World News, publications that faculty and staff are reading so that you can really share what you've learned, especially about the faculty impact on students and that design impact and the need to invest in professional development. We're not born knowing how to teach, right? Much less know how to teach in this kind of modality in a comparative and international education space, combining intercultural and disciplinary work. You have a great argument for why we need to support faculty in order to achieve the learning outcomes that we want to achieve with our students. So brava. And the final thing I want to say is you grew so much through this process. To compare the first drafts to your final draft, it was night and day. And so congratulations.
I can only thank you, Stephanie, for taking this on. It was a lot. And yes, I had full support from Dr. Doherty and Joe. Angela was so for this dissertation. She encouraged me to pursue it, but you helped us through that. So I thank you because you're a champion. Totally, totally great. I am so grateful for your help and your support.
I learned a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, this is very exciting research for us. We're really pleased. with your topic and your results. All
Thank
right.
you.
Any other questions?
No,
Adele?
I just want to say that, Stephanie, just so you know, we've got another dissertation in the hopper that's also on COIL.
Mhm.
So, yeah, no, it's definitely this is an institution that we investigate pedagogy and figure out how it works worldwide. So, and I told Adele she's got to hurry up and defend so we can start citing her and that.
And
Well,
she's actually going to use
she's
it with
doing-
language. The reason I asked that question is exactly what Joe just said. She's actually going to use it in a language classroom for
Spanish.
learning Spanish. Yeah, for learning a second language. And
Yeah.
there's at her institution, there's connections with a university in Ecuador and a university, Joe, I don't remember where the other one was.
El
but-
Salvador.
yeah, oh, that's right. Okay, yeah. And it was just, I'm very excited to see where something like this could go, and especially in a time when travel is a little harder than, than it maybe used to be.
There are people out of Maryland U, Baltimore County that do this. She's actually doing it in her master's course. So, and she wanted to be a part of the study. I reached out to her and I said, no, these are undergrads, but I'd love to have you. But she was very supportive of being a part of it. And K-12 do this for language learning as well. So it's something that I think can work especially well with language. Definitely.
Okay. So at this point, Adele, if you can stop screen sharing for one moment, we are going to place you back into the waiting room while we deliberate, and then we'll invite you back in.
Okay,
In just
no
a-
problem.
So I'm gonna put you